Hi, Kathy White, Certified Professional Ergonomist. I'm here with you today to talk about dual screens. We're talking about having two monitor screens working your computer workstation and how do we set ourselves up for ergonomic success. Again, eye strain is a very common issue when working in the office environment. Symptoms can be things like dry eyes, blurry vision, even headaches that you're experiencing can be related to eye strain at work. Certainly we want to avoid that happening, and a lot of times eye strain can be connected either to the lighting in your work environment or to your monitor setup. We're focused here on monitor setup. I've got a video out there on single monitor screen setup. Today we're talking about two screens or dual screens. What I have here are two screens that are mounted together on an arm. I have some capability here as far as being able to adjust these up and down. I can't really do much beyond that, however, so I just want to state that for your awareness. There are other mount arms out there that allow further swivel capabilities and a variety of other types of adjustments. So I'm going to work with what I have here, but you may have some additional capabilities beyond what I'm able to describe. However, the principles that I will share with you here, you can apply to whatever equipment setup that you have. First thing is the same principles that I explained in my video about single monitor use apply here to dual screens. I want to be about 18 to 24 inches away from the screen, which is about an arm's length viewing distance, which I am able to achieve with this setup. And that helps reduce some of that risk of eye strain. If you wanted to further adjust your monitors back, which I can do in this setup, now I'm beyond an arm's length viewing distance, and that's okay to do so. Just make sure you're not bending your back forward to look at the screen or bending your neck forward to viewing the screen. That's a very common behavior that I see happen, and people don't even realize they're doing it. Just keep an eye out on that, because if you're doing that, you'll want to bring it a little bit back forward, get back to more of that arm's length viewing distance. When it comes to the display height, you imagine a horizontal line extending from your eyes that should be hitting the top third of the screen. I actually could bring myself up a little bit to hit that. I want to do that in order to prevent myself from bending my neck upwards or downwards to view the screen. I want to keep my head and neck in a neutral posture, my ears aligned with my shoulders. Now we can get into what are we doing with these dual screens? How should I orient my body relative to these screens? It really depends how much you're using each of these screens. Most people I work with, they're using each screen equally. And if that's the case, you're going to center yourself right here. Your midline is basically in the middle of all of this setup. Now, I will also mention when you have these two screens, regardless of how much you're using one or the other, they should both be at the same height. What you see here, that principle I just mentioned with that line of sight, this screen is at the exact same height as this screen. They're at the same distance, and in this case you can see they're each tilted, they're angled a little bit towards each other. You can have it set up that way if you prefer more of a flat configuration. Basically, instead of the angle, you eliminate that angle and they're both not angled. That's okay as well. That's more of a matter of personal preference, so don't get too hung up on that, but you definitely want these at the same height, because otherwise you could start to run into some of those neck postural deviations that I mentioned. Now, if you are using one screen a lot more than another, like let's say this is your primary screen, I would center yourself more in line with this screen, and this one's more off to the side for reference. So you want to give some prioritization to this screen. And this is where I would swivel this a little bit, where now this screen is flattened out for me. I don't have this angled in any way. I'm just head on. This one is at a little bit of an angle, and I'm using it as reference. And you could even further angle this screen if you'd like, because again, you're not really spending a lot of time looking at it, but that additional angle might be easier for you to be able to take some quick views of that screen. We're not getting into 3 screens here. I know there are people starting to use 3 screens, sometimes 3 screens, and then you have your smartphone as an additional screen. We could probably get into some more complex setups. I will say the more screens you have, the multitasking can be a lot for your brain to handle, and you have to start to question your effectiveness, and then you do start to get into some situations where you may be compromising ergonomic principles. Particularly if you go beyond 3 screens, it becomes extremely difficult for you to be able to manage all of these ergonomic principles and reduce risk of neck deviations and eye strain. It gets pretty complicated, and again, the brain part comes in with the multitasking as well, and you have to question your efficiency and productivity when you have so many screens. Obviously, if you're working in a control room environment, that's a whole nother matter. We're talking here about office ergonomics, but I just want to state that disclaimer for those of you that have even more than 3 screens in your office. Just ask yourself if you think you're getting enough value from a productivity perspective out of doing it. If your work tasks do require that, maybe you are more of a control room person working in an office, then I totally understand that. I hope this information helped though with thinking about 2 screens, and you can apply these principles to 3 screens as well. Thank you for taking the time to listen today.